Okay, let's see if this is working. Can you hear me up here? Well, good morning and aloha, and it's great to be here to get to present in beautiful Maui. And for that, I want to thank Michael Van Buskirk for inviting me here, and Christina. To get started, I want to share just my first experience with a really toxic, pathological personality type. I was probably 4 years into my practice in 1993, doing my Saturday clinic in Rancho Bernardo, and in comes this 28-year-old, very attractive lady, dressed to the button, hair, makeup, nails, stunning. And she comes in and tells me that 2 months ago she'd been in treatment to be detoxified from cocaine and alcohol. And she stayed sober for about a month, and then after that, she relapsed because of her mood disorder. And then she tells me, while she was at her treatment center, her and her therapist had the best sex that she's ever had in her life. Oh, there's more, don't worry. There's more. I tell her that's immoral, unethical, illegal, and that's something that will never be part of our therapeutic relationship. And she tells me, and I tell her she should really think about doing something about that. So I set her up for an appointment the next Saturday. That was my first mistake. And so that morning, I had a 10 a.m., an 11 a.m., and then this lady at 12 p.m. And I opened the door and let my 10 a.m. client out, and I see my 11 a.m. couple sitting there, and they have kind of like a startled look on their face, like, you're going to have to deal with this. And right then I look over to the other side of the waiting room, and here is this woman looking disheveled, dressed in this kind of crazy dress, and she jumps up and goes, "Sean, I have to talk to you." So the other couple's like, "We'll go have lunch. We'll see you at 12. You better deal with this." And so this lady comes in and sits down. I shut the door, and I sit down, and I look over at her, and she has a breast hanging out at me. And I'm just startled. I'm trying to assess the situation. Does she know she has a perky areola staring me in the face? What's up with this? And then out it comes. "Sean, you're the best therapist I've ever had in my life. I've seen her once, mind you, and did mostly just debased her for her behavior. Sean, you're the best. I'm in love with you. We have to have sex. I've been thinking about you since I've seen you the previous week." And so by this point, I'm getting the waft of gin on her, vodka. And I realize not only is she hammered drunk, but she's actually going into detox in front of me. And then she does, what can I say? She just slides down in the chair a little bit more. And I realize this dress is really not much of a dress, and she's not wearing panties. And then, yep, you got it. She gives me the full Sharon Stone basic instinct beaver shot. Just bam. I mean, it wasn't even that. It was like both labias were in just full view. By now, what's going through my head? Panic. I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I'm going to have to do a 5150 on this woman. She's not going to take rejection well. When the police and the paramedics get here, she's going to switch it up on me and say, I assaulted her, I tried to rape her. She's going to sue me. I'm going to lose my license. I'll go to jail. I want my mommy, So, welcome to the wonderful world of personality disorders. By the way, when she did get to the hospital, she did say that I attempted to rape her, but the psychiatrist there quickly debunked that. And when I called her father up, because he was emergency contact, I get him on the phone, and there's this huge sigh on the other end of the phone, and he says, "What's she done now?" So that kind of alleviated my fear that there would be any legal repercussions. So with that, for this presentation, what we're going to do is just go over, it's going to be a little bit different fare than what you guys are used to. We're going to talk about the overview and some demographics, and then we're going to talk about, we're going to go right DSM-5 and talk about cluster A, cluster B, and cluster C. And then we're going to go straight psychoanalytic stuff, and we're going to do some historical profiles to really elucidate this a lot. And also, some of the people we talk about will have addictions, some will not. And then toward the end, we'll go over popular media and film and how Hollywood has really covered these different personality types. And then at the end, I'm going to give you, just the few brief things that you guys can do in your practice to protect yourself from these individuals, or in your professional life somewhere else, or in your family, or wherever it may be. So let's see if this works. Why consider these? Well, the most important things is personality disorders are just highly manipulative. And they use it through charm, seduction, persuasion, excitement, and emotionality. Even the most professional people, I've had psychiatrists just completely, bushwhacked by these individuals. That's how cunning and unbelievably seductive they are. It's like the Venus flytrap. It's like the draw in from these people is just so powerful. You think they're just the greatest people in the world, but then once you get engaged with them, that's when the danger comes forth. Individuals unaware of personality disorders, manipulations can be easily victimized, injured, and endangered. And, as we move on and you see the type of people that we're going to be talking about, you'll see why. Needless to say, not all people with personality disorders are addicts or alcoholics. Not all addicts and alcoholics are personality disorders. And the ones that is most important, I think, for you guys as physicians is people with PDs who are addicts will be the ones that come in and do drug seeking, will find illness, will manipulate on a very high scale. They could be people you've known for a while, and then all of a sudden they get into a crisis in their life, and all of a sudden this patient you've known for a while is showing and displaying all these different, attitudes and behaviors. And so it's just incredibly important that you have some understanding of this. And Dr. Van Buskirk was just telling me that, in the beginning, he didn't have a lot of experience with personality disorders. I went to 3 years of graduate school directly dealing with mental illness, 2 years of psychometric testing, and plus my dissertation, and I still don't know enough about personality disorders. So it's just an ongoing thing. Most importantly is they sue. And when we talk about cluster A, cluster B, and cluster C, we're going to pick out the ones that you guys need to be really thinking about here. I could almost guarantee you, if any of you fine doctors have ever been party to a lawsuit, there's probably a greater 50% chance that it was someone with a personality disorder, specifically cluster B, maybe cluster C. If you've been party to 2 or more lawsuits, I can almost positively guarantee you one of the persons suing you was a personality disorder. Either that or you're a really bad doctor. I don't know. It's like, okay, let's take a look at these guys. Getting good stats on this is really tough. I didn't do a scale with a breakdown, but the best information that we can get right now is with any given PD, there's a 9.1 to 14.8% in our population. And that's based on National Institute of Health, National Institute of Mental Health, CDC. You can probably look up different graphs, but collectively, that's probably what we're dealing with in the population. What I talk about a little bit on Thursday is there's more of these individuals coming for a vast amount of reasons, which is going to be pretty interesting what's coming up. It's the overview of what to expect in the next decade, 2 decades, 3 decades. With these guys, there's a high likelihood of dual diagnosis in substance abuse and substance dependence. Once again, not all PDs have drug addiction. Not all drug addicts have personality disorders. But with specific ones of the personality disorders, they have a very, very high propensity for drug abuse. High comorbidity with mental illness. The breakdown, 61% generally men, 39% women. And an important factor, and I've seen so many of these folks over the years, psychiatrists who don't like me just refer them to me. Some personality disorders, again, but not all, really suffer. I've seen some come in who are just so miserable in their lives. They are just so unhappy, and it's beyond just depression or anxiety. They are just miserable on so many levels. It's just, well, you're doctors. You know what it is to see people suffer with illness, and this is no different than any other. Important, they're on a continuum from benign to malignant, mild to wild. Some personality disorders are just, they're not too terrible to have to deal with. They're just there. They're kind of obnoxious. Others are just simply just as dangerous as they can be. I can't stress this point enough, and a lot of the people that I see with crisis stuff are people that are coming in that are dealing with people with personality disorders. I'm not really dealing with the personality disorder themselves, although I have. They feel they don't have a problem, it's everybody else. It usually is a family member, someone at their work, whatever the case is. They'll come in because they're going crazy because they're dealing with this individual that's so unstable. And again, they've locked into them through this PD's ability to charm, manipulate, seduce, and then once they've got the person, they just destroy them. They just suck the life out of them. So family members who have people that have PDs, it's just a horrible, horrible condition. And it's not one that really can be treated, as we'll see at the end here. Depending on the type of PD, significant others usually suffer with severe anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, low self-worth, and are often very insecure about making decisions. Or it can be the other side of the coin where they come into contact with a personality disorder and the PD just does what they do and the person reacts very negatively. They become angry, hostile, they just lose it because they're dealing with this unhealthy mentality. Personality disorders cause severe burden on our correctional institutions and mental health services. That's a given. If you go pretty much into any jail or prison, you're going to be dealing with upwards of 90% sociopaths and psychopaths. Okay, we break it down. Axis 1 is our primary diagnosis. Most of you are familiar with this. Affective disorders, that's all the depressions and bipolar, anxiety disorders, all the psychotic disorders, ADD, learning disorders. And then axis 2, we score personality disorders and now developmental disabilities. 3 is medical problems. 4 is psychosocial functioning. And 5 is our GAF, our GAF. And how this goes is when we do our differential diagnosis or when we do what we get from psychometric testing, axis 1 is the problem we're going to treat. 2, 3, and 4 are things that are going to complicate treating number 1. 5 is their global assessment of functioning. And in the cases that I've worked with a lot of different attorneys, they want to know what the GAF is because that gives them the damage to the individual because that's what's going to give them the leverage they need in any particular lawsuit. And then again, diagnostic criteria on these before we jump into them. DSM-5 divides PD into 3 categories, cluster A, cluster B, and cluster C. Each personality disorder has 7 to 9 traits or criteria. And here's an important factor. With personality disorders, as we'll see at the end, these aren't treatable conditions. I wish they were, but they're just not. We don't have the skills, the tools, the experience. You have about as much chance of changing a personality disorder's trait as you do it changing the color of their eyes, the color of their skin, or the color of their hair. It's not going to happen. And it's just fascinating to think, how do these people become who they are? Cluster A is listed as the odd and eccentric. Cluster B, and these are the dangerous ones, the ones that you guys need to have some information on and be thinking about if they show up into your office. They're the erratic and dramatic, and cluster C is the anxious and the insecure. And again, depending on what kind of personality disorder the individual has, really will reflect what kind of drugs that they generally go for or that they will usually take. So let's look at cluster A. You won't know this person, unless you scratch the surface, and then out it'll come. It's like, generally they're really well hidden. They're a little bit reserved, distrustful, suspicious. They definitely personalize and will blame on anything that they perceive as a transgression against them. They hold on to resentments and grudges. They go to irrelevant information, quick to anger and counterattack. I just got referred one while I was here. I'm dealing with what we're going to do with this person. But again, you won't see this come up a lot, but they are out there. Schizoid, isolate, solitary, neither desires or enjoys family or close relations. Indifferent to praise or criticism, detached, generally a flat affect. Remember the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski. He was a classic schizoid. Generally, they're not violent people, but there are exceptions. Lastly is a schizotypal personality disorder. Odd beliefs, magical thinking, behavior or appearance that is odd or peculiar, weird speech, superstitious, things like that. This group, generally, for the ones that I've seen, and they're a very rare kind of bunch because they don't drag a lot of attention to themselves, but they generally don't use a lot of type of drugs. If anything, they'll smoke cigarettes, maybe use cannabis, maybe drink some alcohol, but life is weird enough as it is for these folks. They don't really need any help, and as a result, they tend to stay away from it. And also, when you see schizoid and schizotypal, a lot of people get that kind of confused with schizophrenia or its 5 subtypes, schizoaffective, schizophreniform, or another type of psychotic disorder. The difference is very simple. If you have a schizophrenia or a schizophrenic or a schizoaffective, and you give them one of the half a dozen brilliant medications out there, their positive and negative symptoms of schizophrenia will remit in 2 to 4 weeks. And then you'll tell them what they were saying while they were in their psychotic state, and they'll be like, no, really? No, never I said that. And they won't be able to remember it. You can give these folks any medications you want, and it's not going to make any difference. They're going to be who they're going to be. Yes. Yeah. And when I say positive and negative symptoms of psychotic conditions, including schizophrenia, positive symptoms are, of course, auditory and visual hallucinations, ideas of reference, thinking that microphone is communicating with me when there's nothing coming out of it. Negative symptoms are just flat affect, listlessness, depression, withdrawn, some that overlap with these. But it's really the positive symptoms of schizophrenia that will really stick out. And once again, you give somebody some of the medications that we use to treat that, and within 2 to 4 to 6 weeks, almost all of that symptomology will remit. And like any other pathology, the quicker, like schizophrenia will show up 18, 19, and 20, males mostly. It'll show up just like, a rainbow. It just comes. And the sooner you treat that pathology, like any pathology, the greater likelihood it'll remit and go away. The longer you wait, the more psychotic breaks they have, or if they're bipolar or affective disorder, the more breaks they have over a longer period of time, the less likely they're going to come on back to normal. Let's get to where the action is. The sociopath. And we'll hit on this a little bit. The hallmark feature of these individuals is they just lack conscience and empathy. It's just not there. Or it's extremely underdeveloped. Irresponsibility, reckless endangerment, poor pre-planning, failure to fulfill responsibilities, deceitful, aggressive, willful lying, repeated unlawful behavior. Naturally, these people are out there. It's too bad that PDs don't have, tattooed on their forehead, hey, I'm a sociopath, so you can realize who you're dealing with right off the bat. But slowly but surely, it's all in the history, and it's all in the current behavior. You don't have to look too far and think about it. It's just there. Narcissistic personality disorder. These are individuals who need constant admiration, arrogant, entitled, fantasies with power, wealth, beauty, grandiose, is special and can be only understood by other special people. No empathy or the need or ability to identify with the feelings of others, is personally exploitative towards others. I always know when I'm with a narcissist because I'll run into them and they'll spend 15 minutes talking about themselves, and then they'll give me 15 minutes to talk about them, and then it's time to go. This is a handful. Borderline personality disorder. This predominantly is women who have this condition, although I've seen men with it. Men who have it are ones who have suffered usually the worst emotional abuse, physical and sexual, generally at a very young age of life, largely at that Freudian first, psychosexual stages of development, and they're just a mess. Women with borderline, like the one I described in my office at the beginning of this, can be incredibly dangerous. They will make accusations. I have a client now who's 27 who had a consensual relationship with a woman who was obviously a borderline twice or three times, and then he just, they were younger, late teens, early 20s, and then he kind of just, left her alone, didn't return her phone calls. She went to the police, reported that he raped her, and he served 6 years in penitentiary for it. And this is just a very dope kind of unassuming guy, and that's the kind of things that they can do. And then lastly, the histrionic personality disorder. This is just the drama queen. I mean, it's the only way that you can describe them. Excessive emotionality, uncomfortable when not the center of attention, rapid shifting and shallow display of emotion, uses physical appearance to draw attention to self, drama, thinks. Relationships are more intimate than they actually are, and sexually seductive and provocative. Now let's just hit just real quickly a little bit more on cluster B, because this is important. If you are a sociopath, it's like a 2-for-1 deal. All sociopaths are narcissists. At their core, they have narcissism. This is very important to know. If you are a borderline personality disorder, you have narcissism built in. It's a 2-for-1 deal too. Plus, with some borderlines, like the one I had in my office in the beginning, she was not only narcissistic, but she was also histrionic. So it's a 3-for-1 deal, So that's why cluster B is just such an incredibly dangerous, pathological, and if you know someone who has this, it's just draining and exhaustive to be around them. Of all 3 clusters, this is the group that has the highest drug abuse. They take anything, they take everything, they will do med seeking, they will hit you up for fake illnesses if you can fall into the fact that they're there. Either to use them themselves or to sell. It's a free-for-all. They will take anything at any time. And sometimes it gets missed. People think that we're just dealing with a drug addict or an alcoholic, but really what's behind the story is we have a personality disorder that we have to do something about if we even think we're going to deal with drug addiction. And then real quickly, we'll just go through cluster C. The avoidant personality disorders. This actually is one of the larger groups of personality disorders out there. Basically fears rejection, is afraid to make friends because They aren't certain if they'll be liked. They won't take personal risks, things like that. Dependent personality disorder, this is like codependency, although codependency really doesn't have a DSM-5 criteria. But the dependents need to be taken care of, insecure, unsure of their decisions. If you have a colleague or one of your staff that's always coming up and going, what about this? Do you think I should be doing this? Is this diagnosis right? They're always needing that approval. They're always needing to be, reminded or assured that what they're doing is correct. And so they also make up, along with the avoidant, a larger proportion of personality disorders. And last but not least is OCPD. Now, this gets confused with OCD, because OCD is obsessive compulsive disorder, and this is the personality type. The difference between the two is very simple. OCDs drive themselves crazy, and they know they drive themselves crazy. Repetitious behaviors, having to lock the door 10 times, putting things in order in the house. They're aware of their obsessive compulsive nature. Personality disorders, they think what they're doing is absolutely normal, and they drive other people crazy in the process of doing it. I have one OCPD. Before he sends his laundry to the dry cleaning, he has to press it out, button it, make it all neat, stack it perfectly in, and take it in. But it works for him. What can I say? Okay, what do we got here now? All right. Okay, you ready to have some fun? Ariel Castro, a few years ago, this man in Cleveland, Ohio, abducted and raped and held hostage 3 young women in his house in Cleveland, Ohio. He was sociopath and 2-for-1 deal, narcissist, and throws sadism on top. For someone who held other people captive for 12 years, he couldn't stand 30 days in jail, and he hung himself. What can you say? Charlie Manson. Sociopath, unbelievable narcissist, and psychotic in different ways, but I really don't think he was a psychopath. I just don't think he met that qualities. He was psychotic and a sociopath and a narcissist. He probably had a lot of other traits in cluster B, but he wasn't the full crazy because his crimes were not that involved. He manipulated in a huge way other people to go out and do his crimes. It wasn't a big mastermind thing, not like some of these other guys. Ted Bundy on top. Now there's a psychopath. Does anybody know the difference between psychopath and sociopath? We kind of, just lump them all together. Well, there's a very major difference. Sociopaths, like Gacy at the bottom, they just lack the IQ. The psychopath has a much higher IQ than the sociopath. Bundy was a liar to the end. Of course, he was a narcissist as well. He was a misogynist. He targeted women, raped, and killed. And he was very well thought out and pre-planned, but eventually, with the massive law enforcement on his tail, there was no getting away from it. And with that type of IQ, he was a pre-law student, I think, and he just had that higher level intellect. Of course, the mastermind plan that they're talking about is insane to begin with. Gacy was he got young men and boys, got them on drugs, raped them and killed them, or killed them and raped them, or whatever, and just buried them under his house. It really lacked deep thought or pre-planning, so him getting caught was no big deal. I mean, it just didn't even impact him. Bundy tried to the last minute, even the day before his execution, was still denying his crimes. Anybody know who this guy is in the corner? Probably not. This is Dennis Rader. He's the BTK killer, bind, torture, kill, who had a rampage from 1974 to 1991 in Wichita, Kansas. And He was incredibly intelligent, definitely a psychopath, definitely a narcissist. A matter of fact, his narcissism was actually his biggest personality problem. And that being is he actually got away with it. As he stopped killing in 1991 and was on almost a 14-year hiatus and couldn't stand the fact that he got away and people didn't know that he committed these crimes that he got away with. So he started doing what he did, sending letters and reports and whatever to the news station and the police to taunt them to catch him, which eventually led to his capture. And then at his sentencing, when he got up to address the family members of the people he killed, one of the police officers reported it was something of a meek apology and more like an Academy Award acceptance speech. Just unbelievable narcissism. Did him in. Okay. Yes, yes. Just his image is offensive. And the reason is because when we look at this man, our deepest unconscious dark shadow archetype is projected onto him. And when we see this, we think lunatic, madman, racist, criminal, and we just kind of heuristically or otherwise lump all of those titles to him. But his pathology was 1,000 times deeper. Anybody want to take a guess at what kind of personality disorder he was? Absolutely narcissistic. Anything else? Paranoid. Good. That's actually great. He fell into all three clusters. Cluster A, he was a paranoid personality disorder, even before the 2 attempts on his life. Cluster B, he was everything. He was sociopath, narcissist, borderline was his number 1 trait. He's actually one of the reasons I got into psychology. I was a history buff with my brother, and I was always fascinated why people did such horrendously awful, wicked things to other people. So he was all of cluster B, and in cluster C, he was an obsessive compulsive personality disorder. We're going to get into some couples or some groups just real quickly. Whenever you get a power play when these personality disorders find each other, and that's the most important thing. The really sick, toxic personality disorders, they find other sick personality disorders. They're drawn together, and there's this power play between them. Do you know what it is? Anybody watch CSI or something? One is dominant and one is submissive. Hitler was a dominant, here were his submissives. All of the people in his regime were just unbelievably pathological. When Nazi Germany fell and surrendered unconditionally to the Allies in 1945, early May, Eisenhower sent in this brilliant psychiatrist named Douglas Kelly. And he went in and did profiles for the entire 14, 15 months they were in Nuremberg on trial. He did the Rorschach, he did the Bender Gestalt, he did the TAT, the Thematic Apperception Test. And what did he find? You got it. Narcissists, submissives, alcoholics, drug addicts, a sadist. Hitler, too, was a sadist. Julius Streicher, sadist. Seyss-Inquart, a sadist. Kaltenbrunner. We will never again, at least I hope, never again see such an incredible level of sickness in any type of regime. But believe me, there are other Hitlers out there, and I think because of the way things are in the world and media and whatever, we could be creating more. Leopold and Loeb, both sociopathic, both narcissistic. Leopold had a IQ allegedly of 210. This was America's first foray into a gay couple. Richard Loeb was madly in love with Leopold for his IQ, and Between the two of them, they wanted to commit the perfect crime. It wasn't so perfect because they just killed a 14-year-old boy, and Leopold left his spectacles at the scene of the crime, so it wasn't too bright. Loeb was, not only both were narcissists, but Loeb was a dependent personality. He was so awed by Leopold's sexual sadism and all this other stuff that he would have done anything for the guy. Clarence Darrow famously defended them to the tune of $1 million and saved them from the electric chair. Loeb died in a prison rape gone bad. He was stabbed to death. Leopold was paroled in '58, moved to Puerto Rico, where he died in '71. Don't know much about Bonnie, but definitely Clyde was narcissistic. He was incarcerated as a teenager for petty crimes. When he got to adult prison, he was brutalized, definitely narcissistic, definitely sociopathic, which, by the way, tells me Bonnie was somewhere probably in that cluster as well. And they were like, honestly, the modern day or the past day Facebook people. They love to see their picture in the papers and read articles about them, and that's what drove them, I think, a lot to do the crimes that they did. The psychotherapist is here, Debbie. She was asking me the other day, I don't see where she is, but Debbie was asking me, what is it? Are they born or are they made? Well, these two kids, John Venables and Robert Thompson, abducted a little 3-year-old boy in London in '93 and just did unthinkable things to him before they murdered him. They were 8 years old. If you just look at their eyes, you can tell who was the dominant and who was the submissive. I hear there's a lot of Canadians here, and you probably go back to 1990 or mid-'80s. Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka, same thing. Dominant, personality disorder, narcissist, sociopath, psychopath, and he just, through a series of seductions, boundary violations, microaggressions, lured her in and found out she was going to be a willing participant. Started with her younger sister, raped and murder, followed by 6 others. Okay, you ready for a really good one? Oh! Oh, you like this picture? You'll love the next one. I couldn't help myself. That's the regressed adolescent male in me, I'm sorry. One of his disgruntled generals photoshopped him and probably got executed for this. If you are a physician from North Korea and you're here today, I'm sorry. No laughing matter. Take a look at this guy. He was born in 1983 to his father, Kim Jong-il, and one of his consorts. And you can bet growing up words he never heard were, take a time out, no, put that back, and you're grounded. During his early years, he watched his father flesh out and kill all political opponents, including some family members. He was sent to Switzerland outside Bern for schooling in when he was, I can't remember, but when he was about 15 or 16, flanked by bodyguards, came back, rose miraculously through the ranks of military to Wansu, and he's in charge right now. No doubt, malignant narcissist and chronic SRB syndrome, and at best, he's somewhere in the spectrum. One thing's for sure, we can expect bad things from this guy. Comorbidity. Let's see. Richard Burton. Let's get to some of the better talent. Richard Burton, brilliant actor. And what we're going to kind of talk about right now with some of these other people coming up is what I call the trifecta. Just the fatal trifecta or trinity of mental disorders. Burton had this manic quality, bipolar. He just was a brilliant Shakespearean actor. He was narcissistic, absolutely, and he was alcoholic. I'm a bit puzzled. Maybe you guys can help me out. I could never understand why none of their 4 marriages ever worked out, you know? Anyhow, he almost died of alcoholism in the 70s. He was diagnosed in 1981 with liver cirrhosis and kidney disease. He died of a brain hemorrhage in his home in Switzerland in 1984. Who didn't love John Belushi? In November of 1980, Rolling Stone called him America's host for a skyrocketing fame in The Blues Brothers, 1941, and of course, Animal House. Again, this manic quality, this unbelievable addiction, and this narcissism. This is just the fatal combination. And you know what? This isn't rocket science. This isn't what you guys do. All you have to do is think about some of these people. And this is just a small list of profiles. We could go on and on and on. But you just think about these people, and this stuff should just jump out at you. He died of a cocaine heroin overdose at Chateau Marmont on the Sunset Strip in March of 1981. I think I was stunned when I heard that on the news. The Lizard King, also known as Jim Morrison, front man for The Doors. There was him at the start of his career, New York Pictures in 1967. A short 3 years later, that's what alcohol had done to him. Again, this fatal trifecta: narcissism, manic depressive symptoms, and massive addiction. It is absolutely fatal. You might know some of these guys, but your kids definitely do. And again, same thing. Lane Staley, raucous lead singer for the 90s band Alice in Chains. Again, manic depressive illness, narcissism, massive heroin addiction. He was dead for probably 3 days before they found his body in 2002. And in the same class, of course, is Kurt Cobain. One of their songs, his songs off one of his albums was called Lithium. And he had tremendous bipolar, which he refused to treat. Fatal condition. Heroin, narcissism, and bang, his wife, if Borderlines had a queen, she would be it. Courtney Love, woohoo! She's out there. After his death, she spent weeks and months suing the other band members for privileges. Okay, let's take a look at some fun stuff here. Some videography. I'm sure you know this. The Sweet Lowdown. Sean Penn's one of his great roles. He played the Depression-era guitarist Emmett Ray. And he was just a massive narcissist who completely exploited and took advantage of this very attractive mute girl. It's a must-see movie. Oh! This was a brilliant film. It was just brilliant. Anybody want to guess at what he had going on? He was OCD, PD. But it was kind of in there. It might have been OCD and OCPD, but also in the movie, he was a definite narcissist. Toward the end of the movie, he's out to dinner with Helen Hunt, and he goes, he says something, that's offensive, and he does the Jack Nicholson eyes at the top of the head. Was that a good thing to say? And she goes, if you don't say something nice about me right now, I'm getting up and leaving. And he goes, well, you're the best person I've ever known, and people go by every day, and they don't recognize that you're a good mother and a beautiful waitress, and you do things for other people. And the fact that I recognize that and other people don't makes me feel good about me. Let's look at some other juicy ones, huh? We're having fun here. Ho-ho! Guess what that's about, huh? Clint Eastwood deals with Jessica Walter's borderline personality style, Dirty Harry style. It was a must-see movie. She did a great job showing the complexities of this very sick, serious condition. Need I say more? This was the movie to see in the 80s. It was like, oh my God, did you see Fatal Attraction? Glenn Close played a borderline to a T. What else we got here? What are the other hits? Oh, more borderline movies. The young couple on the end have a good relationship. And the little girl upstairs, she's got some problems. Guess what that one's about? Okay, what else we got here? Okay, these are some good. Let's put them both up there. No Country for Old Men. What was he? Everybody would think psychopath, and that's a close one, but he was really a sociopath. At least that's my opinion. And the reason is he had a one-track mind. What was he after? The money. And he just popped people in the head with an air gun, and that was it, you know? And that he was one-track mind. 7, Kevin Spacey did a brilliant job with this elaborate display of the 7 deadly sins, including mounting up to his own death, which would have been the sin of wrath. And so that being what it was, that's just a drastic difference between these two. Both are highly dangerous, needless to say. My new favorite movie. How many of you guys saw this movie? This was off the charts. He played an absolute malignant narcissist. And the kid that he just abused went initially from just shock. And then, remember I told you that when you get around these people, you can act out this worse violence, this awful, anger and whatever. Well, that's what the kid did. But what some people may have missed in this movie is J.K. Simmons, who's just a great actor. He was also a sadist because he enjoyed the fact that he was working these musicians against themselves in just the most cruel and unconscionable kind of way. All right. This is probably, again, what to take away with, and then we'll hopefully get a couple of questions. If you can identify a PD with an emphasis on cluster B, you have to do some things, and that is set strong verbal, physical, and emotional boundaries because personality disorders have none. And once I said, you could be around them for years and all of a sudden scratch the surface, or they destabilize in their life because one of 1,000 different things, and out they'll come. The only other intervention that you can do is say what you mean, do what you say, do not deceive or lie to these people. They will use it against you. They will never forget. They will bring something up from 5 minutes ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, and beat you over the head with it like it just happened. What I do is when I do get a personality disorder in the office, I don't say, you're like a narcissist. What are you going to do about that? What I do is I pick out the traits, and I label the traits that they're doing, because that's something they understand. And I'm like, how is this working for you? How is this not working for you? And that's pretty much as you can do. If you call a managed care company and say, yeah, I have a new client, she's a borderline, the managed care company people are like, well, good luck with that, because we're not paying anything on it, These are permanent conditions. They're considered untreatable. We do have some therapies, DBT being one of them, that works relatively well on borderlines if they go through the extensive treatment of it. It works better on a lot of the veterans coming back from the Middle East who have PTSD. All else fails. So, any thoughts, questions, ideas?